Hey, quick thing before we dive into today's podcast. The Terrible Photographer podcast now has a support page. If you go to terriblephotographer.com/support, it's basically like buying me a coffee, except instead of caffeine, you're just helping fund this weird, strange audio cult for emotionally unstable creatives. Hey, and listen, 3 people, I'm so excited. 3 amazing, generous, probably too good for this show humans have chipped in actual green money to keep things going. I'm absolutely blown away and I'm so thankful. And you are founding members of whatever weird creative movement this is turning into. And honestly, that's kind of beautiful. I absolutely love it. So if this show makes you feel seen, or at least slightly less feral in your artistic spiral, I would love for you to support it. Head over to terriblephotographer.com/support. There's no paywall. There's no merch drops yet. Although I've been thinking, how cool would it be for some stickers and mugs? Maybe that's in my future. Who knows? But it's just weird, honest storytelling founded by people who get it. Okay. Speaking of pacing around in confined spaces, questioning everything, we went to the zoo because my kid wanted to see something dangerous. It was hot. It was San Diego, September. I didn't really want to be there. I'd been staring at my laptop for a couple days trying to write something halfway meaningful about the kind of creative work that isn't bad enough to hate or good enough to matter. It's just the okay work, you know? See episode 27 for that, Jim. And Lucy wanted to see the lions. And when your 11-year-old wants apex predators and overpriced churros, you go, you know? You do it for the love. You do it for the memories. So there we were. Jamie squinting at the map on her phone. Me mentally half stuck in whatever draft that I had abandoned that morning. And Lucy's dragging us towards the big cats because, of course, she's obsessed with anything that could theoretically kill her. And that's when I saw her. The lioness, draped across the sun-warmed rock like she'd owned the place. She probably did. It was that posture and the half-lidded eyes, the casual disdain. It wasn't indifference, it was dominance. A National Geographic centerfold for the "don't fuck with me" issue. The light was good. It was harsh, late day sun, maybe 4 p.m., and there was something warm about it, amber, like old whiskey. The light was catching the edges of her fur in a way that just made the whole thing feel staged. It's too beautiful to be real, but there it was. And then she moved. This lioness moved. She got up from her rock and she started to pace. 13 steps to the left, pivot. 13 steps to the right, pivot. 13 steps back again. Same pace, same path, same worn line of dirt between her massive paws. It was mechanical. It was almost hypnotic. And Lucy spoke up. She asked, "Dad, why is she doing that?" I don't really know, I said. And so we watched. 10 minutes, maybe 15. Long enough for Jamie to find the nearest snack stand and buy a $12 bottle of water. And long enough for me to start counting. 13 steps every single time. Like a looped scene from a nature documentary directed by someone who's seen too much prison footage, you know? There was a staff member nearby, khaki vest, clipboard, the kind of person who knows some shit. So I asked her. She told me the story. The lioness came from this roadside zoo in Eastern Europe. One of those nightmare joints, the concrete floors, rusted bars, the smell of piss and despair. Her enclosure was about 8 feet by 8 feet, and she lived in that box for 7 years. Let that sink in. 7 years. Same walls, same air, same view, no exit. So when the San Diego Zoo took her in, which, I mean, I will say, like, if you ever get a chance to come to San Diego, I know I'm not really a zoo person either, but every time I have gone to the zoo, I am always super impressed. They are such believers in conservation. It really is impressive. And so when the safari park took her in, they gave her everything. Acres of land, rocks and caves, other lions to socialize with, enrichment toys, scents to track, food puzzles to solve. They built her a goddamn utopia. Jungle Book meets Four Seasons. That was 3 years ago. She still walks in that cage. Not the physical one, that's gone. It's long gone. What's left is something else. The scientists call it stereotypic behavior. And it's a psychological groove so deep, so worn in, that even when the world around you changes, you don't. She has acres to roam, maybe miles, but she paces the same 13 steps. And I watched her sweating under that cartoonishly hot San Diego sun, and I felt something that I didn't expect. Not just sympathy, not just sadness, but a little recognition, because I know that walk. This is what I've been thinking about for the past few months, actually, leading up to this episode. I've been thinking about this episode for a long time, trying to mentally piece it together, and that's sort of my process, you know? I have ideas for all these episodes, and they slowly sort of form together in my mind until one day I start to brain dump into a Google Doc. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and it's why I'm calling this episode The Cage. Because I can't think of a better word for what we do to ourselves. If you don't know me, my name is Patrick Four. You're listening to the Terrible Photographer podcast, where we have honest conversations about creativity, identity, and finding your voice. And today I want to talk about 3 cages that we find ourselves in. 3 levels of confinement that we have built, that we pace, and that we can't seem to escape even when the door is wide open. It's been wide open for a long time. The first cage is easy to see. The second cage is harder to admit. And the third cage, well, the third cage is the one why I've been putting off this episode. Okay, so stay with me here. I am a little or a lot into cults. Not because I'm in one, or, I mean, I don't think I'm in one, right? But I'm trying to understand why people join them. I'm fascinated by that question, and I'm fascinated by cults as a whole. And I love cult documentaries. I devour any new ones that show up on Netflix or HBO or Hulu or any of these streaming services. Anything about Jonestown or Heaven's Gate, which has a San Diego connection. There's the one called Nexum, right, where they got their leaders' initials branded into their thighs. Weird shit. The Vow. I'll watch any of it. Sometimes twice. I'm so fascinated by it all. It's any group of people doing things in secret. You know, any organization with rules that don't make sense to outsiders. any structure that promises belonging, if you just follow a specific pattern. I've been like this since I was a kid. So in my hometown of Freeport, Illinois, which is exactly as exciting as it sounds, there's this massive Masonic temple in the middle of downtown. And I mean massive. Architecturally absurd for a town of just 26,000 people who mostly worked at a handful of factories. And this thing was like neoclassical concrete pillars lining the front. The whole building is this imposing gray stone. And it looked like someone dropped this Greek temple into the Midwest and just forgot to pick it up. And I was kind of obsessed with it as a kid. I was so intrigued by it because no one really talked about it. We just everyone just accepted it, right? It was across the street from the public library, which is a Carnegie library. And it's where I spent a lot of summers as a kid. I'd ride my bike down there. I was a weird, nerdy kid who sometimes liked books more than people. Some things don't change. And I would sit out front of that library under this giant oak tree in the shade with whatever book that I had just checked out. And I'd stare at this temple, just stare, trying to figure out just what was going on inside of there. I was super into the Boxcar Children back then. Do you remember those books? The 4 orphan kids solving mysteries, living in a boxcar. And the day that I'm thinking about, I probably had book number 5, Mike's Mystery. Benny and his friend Mike got curious about a uranium mine, and things got a little weird. And to me, I was always Benny. Benny was the youngest. Benny was the annoying one, asking too many questions. And that was me growing up, the youngest of 2 older brothers. And I would be sitting there reading about these fictional kids solving made-up mysteries while staring at this very real building full of real secrets that no one would or could explain to me. Because nobody would tell me what happened in there. I remember my dad and I, or my mom and I, would drive past it, and I would ask, what is that? And they would say, well, that's the Masonic temple. Like, that explained anything, right? It just gave me a name for this mystery. But in retrospect, I don't think they knew either. I don't think most people in that town knew. Which made it better, honestly. It's more mysterious. Then one day, I was maybe 8 or 9. I volunteered to be in this kids' choir. I was not a singing type of kid. I didn't really like singing. But I found out that the performance was being held in the Masonic temple, in the basement. They had a performance hall down there, apparently. And I was like, yes, this is it. This is my chance. I'm getting inside of this place, finally. So we were down there rehearsing. And I don't know what this was for, but we were singing this mashed up melody of the military branch theme songs. You know, the peak mid-90s patriotic weirdness, like Anchors Away, bleeding into the Air Force song, bleeding into whatever the Marines sang. I didn't really care. I was inside. And because I was a kid in the mid-90s, and because I had read approximately 47 Boxcar Children books by that point, a few of us decided what 8-year-olds do when adults aren't paying attention. We explored. We snuck around like we were solving some kind of mystery, which we were. We were the Boxcar Children. Except instead of finding stolen jewels or counterfeit money, we were about to find, well, I didn't know what. Then that was the whole point. We found these rooms with black and white checkered floors, like giant chessboards. We found a room with wooden thrones at the front, like actual thrones, like ornate, raised up on platforms, like something out of a medieval castle. These vast ceiling murals that looked older than anything else in Freeport, older than the town itself, maybe. Then we walked into one massive room, chairs arranged on platforms 3 rows deep around the entire perimeter, all facing inward, not towards the stage, not towards a front, just inward at each other. And in the dead center of this room was this lectern that looked like it belonged in a big cathedral, not in a basement in the Midwest. And the whole time you had this feeling, this feeling like something weird was going on. Like we'd stumbled into a place we weren't supposed to be or weren't supposed to see. Like we were about to uncover the mystery. Now, whether or not anything actually weird happened didn't matter. It could have been totally benign, right? It probably was, who knows? But in our minds, our 8-year-old minds, raised on the Boxcar Children and the Hardy Boys and every other kids mystery series, our minds filled in the gaps. Goat sacrifices, pagan gods, secret ceremonies with handshakes, men in robes doing something. We didn't know what, and that was the whole point. That was the appeal. I think about that a lot now, how badly I wanted to see inside of that building. And then when I finally got inside, how badly I wanted to understand what it all meant, the symbols, the structure, the secret knowledge that separated members from everyone else. I wanted in, not to expose it or to shut it down. Maybe I wanted to join. Like I wanted to be a part of something that made sense, even if that sense was hidden from the outside world. The Boxcar Children always solved the mystery from the outside. They were investigators, observers. They figured it out. And then they went home to their boxcar or their grandfather's house or wherever they were living in that particular book. But I didn't want to solve it from the outside. I wanted to be on the inside. I wanted someone to hand me the secret decoder ring and teach me the handshake and tell me what it all meant. In other words, I kind of wanted the cage. And when I think about cults, everything that I've learned about cults, that's the thing about them. I don't care if you're talking about Masonic lodges or secret fraternities, certain churches, or any sort of insular group of people with their own language or rituals. It's not what you think. I don't think people join because they're stupid or they're weak or gullible. I think they join because life is really fucking hard. And making decisions is exhausting. And having someone else tell you exactly what to do, exactly who to be, exactly what to believe, that sometimes feels like relief. And so the 8-year-old version of me staring at this Masonic temple, he wasn't afraid of it. He was drawn to it because it represented order and structure and mystery with answers, a set of rules that, if you followed them, would tell you who you were. It was a pattern you could pace, a cage that made sense. Look, I think cults offer clarity in a chaotic world. They offer identity when you're not sure who you are. They offer community when you're lonely. They offer rules when you're overwhelmed by all the options. They offer a cage, and that cage feels good. So there's this researcher, Alexandra Stein, who wrote a book called Terror, Love, and Brainwashing. It's a great book, recommend it. And she talks about how cults work by creating what she calls disorganized attachment. Basically, what happens is the leader becomes both the source of fear and the source of comfort simultaneously. You're terrified of disappointing them, but they're also the only one who can make you feel safe. So you stay, you pace the cage, even when the door's wide open, even if the door has never existed. A few months back, I couldn't stand being at my desk for another minute. You know, the feeling, the emails open, the browser tabs are multiplying, the cursor blinking at you like you're full of shit. It just knows, you know? So I grabbed the aforementioned book and I drove to Balboa Park here in San Diego, and I found this picnic table under a tree, much like I did when I was younger, sitting outside of my library. There's morning sun, you know, the kids are playing tag nearby. Someone's Bluetooth speaker is leaking a little Bob Marley into the air. It's a perfect San Diego postcard. And I'm sitting there reading about cults, as one does. I'm not just skimming it either. I'm fully locked in, right? Total focus. I have a pen. I'm underlining shit. While toddlers shriek and dogs chase frisbees and retirees sip their coffees like it's the first day of the rest of their lives, I'm flipping pages about brainwashing, control, identity collapse, and authoritarian bonding. And that's when this question hits me hard. Is the photography industry a cult? I know. I've offended so many people right now, but stay with me. Is it a cult, or did we just quietly turn it into one? Hear me out. Okay, so because let's be honest, we've built this structure. We have the tribes, the insider language, the self-appointed prophets, and the rituals of belonging, and we defend it like our identity depends on it, because maybe it does. On the superficial side, we have Team Canon versus Team Sony. We've got digital versus film. And if you say you're analog, everyone knows you're not new here. We got wedding shooters versus commercial shooters. We got natural light purists versus the strobe bros. I'm Team Strobe. We got Fuji shooters who won't shut up about film simulations versus everyone else who stopped listening or caring. It's all there. We got the dogma. We got the factions, the war of aesthetics disguised as personal choice. We've got the leaders. We've got the gurus to lead the YouTube personalities with microphones and merchandise. They tell us what matters, what's professional, what's washed, what lens you need, what color grading trend is hot. They're all high priests, you know, and we're the congregation nodding along, buying those workshops, buying those mentorships. We don't say blurry background. We say depth field or bokeh. We don't say taking pictures. We say we make images. You don't run a photo business. You run a creative studio, right? There's a handshake. That's the coded phrase that says, I'm one of you. And there's a script. There's a whole goddamn script. When someone asks what camera I should buy, you already know the answer. Really, if we're honest, that it doesn't matter. It's about your talent and not the gear. But we both know You're going to silently be judged if you show up to Beer and Cameras meetup with a 15-year-old Canon 5D Mark III, right? Unless it's ironically, of course. Ask me that story. And we talk about process the same way too. Vision, intention, connection, never of, I just liked a light and shot it without thinking. That's amateur hour. That's not the correct way. That's not the way. But here's a truth that makes me feel a little uncomfortable. I hate it because I'm a part of it, right? I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm wearing the black Nikes. I see myself in this because it's not just a craft. It's about community, but it's also about money and ego. Camera companies are a part of this. Camera companies need you to upgrade, not because your current gear can't handle the job, but because buying the new camera body earns you points to the club. You're not just buying a tool, you're buying a story, a new badge, a passcode that says, I'm still in this. I'm still relevant. And the ego, that's the real drug we're talking about, right? The dopamine hit of being seen by the right people with the right gear, right? The high of being followed by the right photographer on Instagram. Like that validates your vision. Like shooting a big campaign makes you inherently more credible than the mom in Des Moines who captured something quietly stunning in her backyard. We've made photography into a status game, a caste system with aperture rings and off-camera lighting as gatekeepers. And the cage, it's not just about style or consistency anymore. It's about belonging to the right tribe, following the right leader, speaking the right language, performing the right version of photographer so other photographers will nod and say, yeah, you're one of us. And just like I wanted to be in that Masonic temple as a kid, just like I wanted someone to hand me the secret handshake, explain the rules, we want into these groups. We crave the clarity, the structure, the promise that if we just follow the pattern, we buy the gear, we shoot this way, we talk this way, we edit like that, we'll know who we are, that will belong, that will be safe. Because the cage feels so goddamn good because it saves us from having to think. The cult tells us what's cool. The algorithm tells us what performs. The clients tell us what they want. The industry tells us what's acceptable. So we pace. 13 steps to the left, 13 steps to the right. It's the same path, same pivot. And the door, it's wide open. It never existed even. But we're still walking the pattern we've learned when the cage was real. That's the first cage. The industry cage. The tribal one. It's the obvious one, and it's the easiest one to critique. But the next cage, it's a little bit trickier. Because the next cage, we've built this cage ourselves. So the industry cage is external. It's other people telling you who to be, what to shoot, what gear to buy. It's the status games in tribal warfare and the guru worship. The creative cage, though, the cage that we're talking about, is internal. And it's worse because this one is on you. I'm calling it the creative cage, and it's not just strategic constraint. That's not what we're talking about. I want to be really clear about that. Strategic constraint is when you choose limitations to expand your creativity, like shooting with only a prime lens for a year to learn composition, or committing to one subject matter to go deep instead of wide, or using the same camera system because you know it so completely well that the tool just disappears and you can focus on the work that's in front of you. But the creative cage, the thing that I'm talking about, is different. It's the limitations that we place on ourselves, not because they serve our work, but because we're afraid, or we're insecure, or we're lazy, or because no one ever gave us permission to try anything else. It's the cage that says you have to stay inside the parameters of safety. The walls are comfort. The bars are what's accepted by your peers or your clients or your family or your Instagram followers or your brand. And we lock ourselves inside and convince ourselves that we're just being consistent, or quote, building a brand or staying true to our style. But in reality, we're just scared. We're scared of failing. We're scared of being judged. We're scared of making something ugly or weird or different. We're scared of admitting that maybe the thing that we've been doing for years isn't just the thing that we're actually wanting to be doing. Let me show you what I mean. So a few months back, I was updating my website. It's one of those things that you kind of put off forever because it's tedious and you'd rather be doing literally anything else. But it needs to be done. So new work, retire some old projects, make sure the portfolio still makes sense, make sure it's telling a cohesive story. And I'm sitting in a coffee shop going through years of commercial work, lifestyle shoots, product photography, branding campaigns, all laid out on my Mac screen. And I'm arranging images, building project pages, trying to present myself as a cohesive, creative professional. But then I start to notice some patterns. And there's not intentional patterns, not, oh, this is my signature look patterns. They're just patterns. They're repetitions. They're the same compositional choices showing up over and over. It's the same quality of light, the same camera angles, the same way of framing a person in an environment. There's a lifestyle shoot that I did for a wellness brand, beautiful location, great talent, client loved it. I'm looking at it next to a campaign I shot for a completely different client 2 years later, different industry, different product, different concept entirely. But it was the same approach. It was the same light, same feeling. And it probably made sense in the moment. I justified every decision. This is the right choice for the brand. This is what the client needs. This is what works. But seeing them on the same page together, I sort of question some things. Is this my style, or is this just what I do? Is this, a conscious aesthetic choice, or is this me repeating the same pattern because I know it's safe, because it works, because the clients don't complain and I can execute it without thinking too much about it? And I keep scrolling through the portfolio, the images, and I see more patterns. There's more repetition. And it's all technically pretty good. It's all professional, right? It's what gets me hired. It's exactly what people ask for. But it's all kind of a little interchangeable. You could maybe swap my name and put any other competent commercial photographer's name on these projects, and no one would really know the difference. There's nothing in here that couldn't have been shot by 50 other people with the same gear, the same training or the same understanding of what works. And that's when I started to think about, I don't know, like, I'm not looking at a portfolio. I'm looking at like evidence that I've been pacing the cage for years, just repetition. And sometimes I'm like, I'm doing it because it's how I've always done it, right? 13 steps to the left, turn around, 13 steps to the right, over and over again. And again, the work isn't bad. It's not. It's good. It's exactly what it's supposed to be. But the worst part for me is realizing that I don't even know if I actually see the light this way, or I've just learned to light it the way and I never questioned it. I don't know if these are my compositional instincts or if they're just the compositional rules that I've absorbed from various resources, trainings, workshops, tutorials, inspiration from other photographers' work. I don't know if this is my voice, my true voice, or if I'm just fluent in the industry's accent. Every shoot, I make decisions. Where to place the light, how to frame the shot, what lens to use, what mood to create. And in the moment, these decisions, they feel intentional. They feel mine. But something strange happens because looking at these images, looking at years of work all at once, I can kind of see the cage. The parameters I never step outside of, the approaches I default to, the safety I've built around myself. So I'll never have to risk making something that didn't work or didn't land or didn't meet expectations. I've built this cage out of competence, and then I've paced it for so long. I forgot I was inside one. Here's what the creative cage looks like in practice, just throwing out some different scenarios. It's the wedding photographer who wants to try street photography but never does because, quote, I'm a wedding photographer and that's my thing and people know me for weddings. It's the commercial shooter who wants to make fine art but doesn't because, quote, no one's gonna take me seriously, and besides, I wouldn't know where to start. It's the film photographer who's curious about digital but won't touch them because film, quote, is my identity. And if I shoot digital, I'm a sellout. And it's me using the same 2-light setup for 7 years because I learned it once and it worked. And now I'm too lazy or too scared to try something else. I think we limit ourselves, Not because we're strategically focused, not because we've thoughtfully chosen our constraints, but because stepping outside the pattern feels dangerous. It feels like admitting that we don't know what we're doing. It feels like risking the identity that we've built, the clients that we've earned, the respect that we fought for. So we stay inside, we keep doing the thing we know how to do, and we tell ourselves it's consistency or brand or, quote, professionalism. But I really think it's fear. It's just fear dressed up as strategy. And here's what makes the creative cage so insidious. Other people reinforce it. Your clients hired you because of this cage that you've built. They don't want you to experiment on their dime, rightly so. Your audience followed you because of that cage. They don't want you to change. They want more of what they've already liked. There's this wedding photographer that I know. I'm not going to say her name, but she's pretty successful. She books years out in advance, shoots weddings in Europe. She charges properly, does beautiful work. Very soft light, dreamy, romantic. It's Instagram gold. It's the kind of work that makes you feel things. And she's good. About a year ago, she posted that she was exploring some different directions. She was doing some styled shoots. Styled shoots are just basically test shoots. Darker, moodier stuff, more editorial. She posted some images from a test shoot for this new style. Just one. The comments were not great. This doesn't feel like you, or I've missed your own style, or are you okay? This seems really dark. I love your bright and airy work. This feels off-brand. And she never posted that style again. She was back to soft, dreamy, romantic, back to the cage. Because that's what happens, you know? The cage just isn't internal. Other people lock it from the outside. They liked the way that you were. They hired you because of who you were. Changing means risking that. Changing means potentially losing clients or followers or your income or your identity. So we stay. We perform the version of ourselves that the people want. We become tribute bands to our own authenticity. And the really fucked up part, we convinced ourselves that this is who we are. And we forget that we chose this. We really did. We forget that we have built our own cage. We forget that this cage is not protecting us from the chaos. It's protecting us from the growth. I think about my portfolio a lot and those patterns, those safe choices, the competent, professional, interchangeable work. It's on my mind constantly lately. And I'm wondering what would happen if I tried something different. What would it look like if I shot the next lifestyle campaign with a light that I've been avoiding? What if I frame the next product shoot in a way that makes a client a little uncomfortable? I don't know. What if I brought an approach to a branding session that didn't really fit in the industry playbook? I'm not sure what that means. I'm still trying to figure it out. I think the overall question that I'm asking is, what if I made something risky instead of something safe? Would it be better? I don't know. Would it be worse? Maybe. Would it be more like me or less like me? I don't know. And that's the point. I don't know because I've never tried, right? I've never stepped outside of the pattern long enough to find out. I've never risked showing a client something that might not work. I've never done that. I have never taken a client brief, shot it in a new and interesting way, and presented it. Never risked that. I think all this it gives me an identity that I can count on, you know? It lets me wake up every morning knowing exactly what Patrick Ford, the photographer, the commercial photographer, does and how he does it. But I'm starting to realize, I'm thinking about, the cage only protects you from the terror of not knowing. It doesn't protect you from the cost. And the cost is growth. It's evolution. It's becoming the photographer you could be if you weren't so busy being the photographer that you decided to be 7 years ago when you first figured out what worked. And then you never questioned that shit ever again. That's the second cage. It's the creative cage. The one about technique and pattern and safety. The one that we've built because we're afraid to experiment, afraid to fail, afraid to look incompetent, afraid that the client won't hire us again, afraid that the work won't perform, afraid that we'll discover that we don't actually know what we're doing when we step outside of the thing that we've been doing for so long. But there's a third cage. And this is the one that I've been avoiding. The one that keeps me up at night. The one that I almost don't want to talk about. Because the third cage isn't about the industry. It's not about the technique. It's about why we can't put ourselves in the work. Okay, deep breath. This is the hard part. So, as a recap, the industry cage is about tribes and status. The creative cage is about fear and pattern. But this third cage, the personal cage, it's about why your work doesn't have you in it. Not you as in your technical style or your aesthetic preferences. You, your story, your perspective, your pain, your joy, your specific, messy, complicated human experience. Why can't we integrate that into our work? Why do we hide behind competence and professionalism and clean execution? Why do we make work that's technically perfect, but emotionally void? So last night I was in a gallery show in Los Angeles. This gallery show was for digital techs. And digital techs are the people who manage the tethering and gear and color on commercial shoots. Someone invited me, even though I'm a photographer, not really a digital tech. And so I was kind of crashing this party too, but I was invited crashing. You know, it was an acceptable form of crashing. And I knew a couple people there, so I could blend in. I could stand around with a drink, looking like I belonged. And then this guy showed up. His name was Jesse. And I don't know how Jesse got in. I don't even think he was invited, but he was. And he was impossible to miss. He looked like a younger version of the dude from The Big Lebowski. Sunglasses indoors, the casual, shambling energy, completely unbothered by the fact that he clearly didn't fit the vibe of the room. And he was carrying this big book, like massive, heavy, clearly professionally printed, bound, like a real physical object in the world where everyone else is showing you their work on an iPad or talking about their latest campaign. And so Jesse came up to me and he didn't really ask permission. He didn't wait for an invitation. He just walked up and started talking. And I'm giving him some subtle social cues, right? The ones we use to signal I'm not interested. I'm here for other reasons. Please leave me alone. It's the body language, the minimal response to looking around for an escape route. And he's just ignoring all of it. And he opens this book, this big, massive, heavy printed book of like mixed media and photography and typography. And it was edgy and gritty. And from the outside, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. It was chaotic and raw and the kind of work that makes you feel a little uncomfortable because it doesn't really follow any of the rules that you've been taught about good design or strong composition or cohesive aesthetic. But it was good, right? It was actually really good in this chaotic sort of way. And he started telling me his story. He was in his apartment in Chicago, middle of the night, 3 guys broke in. Mistaken identity. They thought it was a different apartment, thought he was someone else who owed money to some very bad people. And this sounds like it was a movie plot. It felt like a movie plot, and as he was telling it, but it wasn't. And they beat him brutally to within an inch of his life. He knocked out his teeth. And at some point, I don't know how, when, he didn't specify, he just played dead in a garbage sack. He told me this story while standing in a gallery on Santa Monica Boulevard in Los Angeles last night, holding this massive art book, wearing sunglasses indoors. And the way that he told it was just, it was wrong. Not wrong like he was lying, but it was like wrong like his tone didn't match the content. He said it so casually, almost like comedically, like it was just a thing that happened, like getting mugged or missing a flight. Not like he nearly died in a garbage bag in his own apartment. The incongruity was disturbing. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know if I was supposed to laugh or offer sympathy or just stand there with my Diet Coke, which is what I did. I just kind of stood there. And then he pointed at the book, his work, and I realized that it was all there. The story, the trauma, the near death, the garbage bag. It was all woven into this art book that he was showing me. It was all integrated into his art, not as a subtext, not as a subtle metaphor, but it was actual subject matter, complete with the artistic rendition of the police report. And here's what fucked me up about this whole encounter. And it really didn't strike me till I was driving home that night. Jesse reminded me of my older brother, Charlie. A little physically, but more in his energy. The way of being in the world where he just did things. He made things, lived in a way where the rules and social norms and all the things people like me follow, he just didn't give a fuck. He colored outside the lines. Jesse was a little chaotic, you know? He was quirky, he was eccentric. Laughed at inappropriate times at inappropriate things. And Charlie, and my brother, was like that. He was a chef who didn't cook like anyone else. He was really, really good. He was eccentric. He had this chaotic energy to him, just like Jesse. He lived loud and messy and unapologetic. Who put himself, all of himself, the good and the complicated and the difficult, into everything that he made. And I've spent 12 years trying to be the opposite of that. Here's the thing. Last night at that gallery, I was also an outsider. I was a photographer at a Digitech event. But I was an acceptable outsider, you know? I knew a couple people. I had permission, sort of. I could blend in. I could perform belonging well enough that no one questioned whether I should or should not be there. Jesse, though, didn't blend. He didn't perform. Jesse was just Jesse. And to be honest, I was a little uncomfortable with him. I wanted him to leave me alone. I wanted him to read my social cues and respect my boundaries and understand that I wasn't interested in his weird, chaotic art book or his disturbing garbage bag story. I wanted him to pace the cage with the rest of us. But that dude wouldn't. He just stood there, showing me his work, telling me his story, being completely and unapologetically himself in a room full of people performing acceptable versions of themselves. You know, my commercial work is good. It's professional. Clients like it. I'm not bragging, but I understand light. I get composition. I understand how to make a product or a person looked appealing in a photograph. But if you look at my portfolio, I wouldn't say that you know anything about me. You wouldn't know that I grew up in the Midwest. You wouldn't know that that same brother, Charlie, died. You wouldn't know I have ADHD and I've struggled with that my entire life. You wouldn't know that I'm constantly wrestling with whether I'm actually good at this or I'm just competent enough to fake it. You wouldn't know me because I'm not in the work. I've spent a long time learning how to make photographs that clients would approve, that Instagram will reward, and that other photographers will respect. But I haven't learned how to make photographs that reflect actually who I am. And this is the deepest cage. It's the one that says your real self isn't professional enough. Your real story isn't marketable enough. Your real perspective isn't palatable enough. So you hide it. You keep it separate. You make the work that's appropriate. You make the work that's on brand. Just don't make work that actually feels like you. So my brother Charlie died in 2013, 12 years ago. His death really reshaped everything. My relationship with mortality, to creativity, to legacy, to what mattered. And I've never made a photograph about it. I don't talk about it publicly. Not one. In 12 years, I haven't made a single image that even references or experienced that loss and grief. Why? Because it's not professional. Because it won't get me hired. Because clients don't hire you to make work about your dead brother. Because Instagram doesn't reward vulnerability. It rewards aspirational aesthetics and clean, uncomplicated beauty. Because integrating that story into my work would mean making work that doesn't fit in any cage. Work that isn't commercial photography or fine art photography or any category that makes any sense to anyone but me. Work that's just mine. And that's terrifying because what if it's shitty? What if no one cares? What if the most honest work I can make is also the least successful? What if the cage is all I have? But then there's Jesse standing there last night with his big book and his sunglasses, telling his garbage bag story like it's a bad comedy routine. Jesse put his near death into his art and bound it into a physical book and carried it to events where he wasn't invited and showed it to people who didn't ask to see it. His work is weird, man. It's uncomfortable. Doesn't make sense from the outside. Probably doesn't pay his rent. But it's good. I'm telling you, it's good. It's honest as fuck. And it's his. And it has him all over it. It's all of him. And so today, this morning, I woke up early with a cup of coffee and I looked at my portfolio again. And I was just scrolling through all this competent professional work. And I thought about my brother Charlie, all the photographs that I've never made, the story that I've never told, the self that I've never integrated into my work. That, my friends, is the cage. That's the personal cage. It's the choice to hide, the choice to keep your real story separate from your professional work. It's the choice to paste a comfortable pattern instead of risking the uncomfortable truth. Jesse doesn't pace. He colors outside the lines. He makes work that doesn't fit into a category. And so for me, I've been in this cage for so long, I forgot it was even an option. Here's the thing that I just keep coming back to. This lioness in the safari park. The employee told me that they haven't given up on her. They're still trying. There's new enrichment activities. They're varying her environment, positive reinforcement when she explores instead of paces. They're not trying to force her to change. They're just constantly offering her a different possibility. And every once in a while, not often, but sometimes, she takes it. She'll stalk a new scent or investigate a new cave or rock, or she will engage with the pride instead of isolating. It's not dramatic. She doesn't suddenly transform into a wild lioness, but she just takes one step outside the pattern, one step into the acre of freedom she already has, and then usually just goes back to pacing because the cage is familiar. The cage is safe. And the cage is all she knows. But those moments of departure from the pattern, they're evidence that she remembers. Somewhere deep inside of her brain, underneath all that trauma and conditioning and psychological rewiring, she remembers that she's a fucking lion. And I think that's what we're doing as humans, as creatives. We're pacing our three cages. The industry cage, the tribal warfare, the status games, the gear worship, the insider language, the performance of belonging. The creative cage, the patterns that we repeat, the techniques we never question, the experiments that we're afraid to try, the growth that we're avoiding. The personal cage, the deepest one, the story that we won't tell, the perspective that we won't integrate, and the self that we won't put into the work, the vulnerability that we're too scared to risk. And every once in a while, we take one step outside. We make something different. We try a new approach. We let a little bit of our real self into the work. And then we go back to pacing because change is terrifying, because consistency pays the bills, because the cage feels safe even when they're suffocating us. Because those moments matter. Those steps outside the pattern matter. They're evidence that underneath the industry cage or the creative cage or the personal cage, underneath all the performance and the fear and the hiding, there's still something wild in us, something real, still something worth setting free. All right, here's your assignment for this week. And this time I actually am assigning it because we're in the light leak now. And this is where I stop theorizing and start pushing. I'm going to push you a little bit. I want you to identify which cage that you're pacing. I want you to be honest. Is it the industry cage? Are you caught up in the tribal warfare, the gear obsession, the status games? Is it the creative cage? Are you repeating the same patterns, avoiding growth, hiding behind competence? Or is it the personal cage? Are you making work that's technically okay, but emotionally hollow because you're too afraid to put yourself in it? I think instinctually you know which one it is. You know the whole time that you've been listening. And then before this week ends, I want you to take some steps outside of the cage. So what this looks like, if it's the industry cage, I want you to, this might be tough, I want you to unfollow the guru. I want you to mute the gear group. Stop performing the photographer-ness for other photographers and just make something. Doesn't matter what camera you use. Doesn't matter if it's professional. Just make something because you want to, not because the tribe will validate it. And if it's the creative cage, make one piece of work that doesn't fit your pattern. Use the lens that you never use. Try the technique that you've been avoiding. Shoot something that would confuse your clients or your spouse or your parents or your friends, or make your audience ask, why did you make this? And do it badly. Do it scared. Do it without knowing if it'll work. Just do it outside of the 13 steps that you've been pacing for years. And if it's the personal cage, this is the hardest one. Make something that includes you, not your technique, not your style, you, your story, your perspective, the thing that you've been hiding because it's too vulnerable or too weird or too specific. And maybe it's a photograph about grief or joy or confusion or a specific way that the light looked on a specific day that mattered only to you. Maybe it's a portrait that reflects how you actually see people, not how you're supposed to photograph them professionally. Maybe it's the work that has no commercial application, no Instagram potential, no audience except you and the other weirdos in the world who might understand what you're actually trying to say. Make that, even if it's bad, even if no one cares, even if it goes nowhere, because it's yours, you know? Because it's the step outside of the cage. Because it's the evidence that underneath all the performance and the pattern and the hiding, you still remember who you are. And if you can't do it this week, I understand. We're all busy. That's okay too. Not everyone can, but some of you are paralyzed by trauma, by depression, by inertia. Some of you are so deep in the cage that the door doesn't even look like a door anymore. Just don't lie to yourself and say there's no cage. It's there. It's always there. The first step isn't escaping the cage. The first step is honesty. Admitting that you're in one, admitting that you've built it, admitting that you're pacing so long that you forgot what movement feels like. Start there, admit it, even if you can't do anything about it yet. You're not just a member of a tribe. You're not just a pattern repeating technician. You're not just a polished, professional, emotionally sanitized content machine. You're human with a story, with a perspective, with something specific and strange and irreplaceable to say. The cages, all three of them, they keep you from saying it. The lioness in the safari park might not ever stop pacing completely. The pattern might be too deep, the trauma too old, and the cage too familiar. But she has acres. She has options. She has the freedom she hasn't explored yet. And so do you. Just stop pacing. Even for a second. Even if the wild feels too far away, it's still there. And so are you. So, until next week, stay curious, stay courageous, and yeah, stay terrible.